I was reborn back to the day when my elder sister threatened to kill herself. But this time, the person she was begging to marry was the crown prince, my husband from my previous life. As I looked at her with suspicion, Shin Changning took my hand and whispered, "Chang'an, do you believe in reincarnation?" I bit my lip and stared deeply into her eyes. Seeing my eldest sister kneeling on the ground once again, I was overcome with anger. Without a word, I slapped her across the face, sending her crashing to the ground. What is so special about the third prince? Has he blinded you so much that you've lost all sense of shame and abandoned your parents? Shin Changning, look at yourself now. Where is the dignity of a noble lady? In my previous life, my elder sister was the most beautiful woman in the capital. Not only was she unmatched in beauty, but she was also skilled in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. What was even more rare was her noble status. The Shin family was a hereditary marquisate. My father held military power, and my mother's family was the wealthiest in Jiangnan. The status of a Shin family woman was so exalted that even a princess could not compare. As the eldest daughter of this generation, Shin Changning was even more extraordinary, unmatched in the world. Yet she fell deeply in love with the third prince, who was destitute and disgraced. Disregarding propriety and morality, she insisted her parents marry her to the third prince. She even threatened to kill herself to force her father to support the third prince's rise to power. However, the third prince, Lu Heng, was not a man of integrity. After ascending the throne, he quickly turned against them. He accused the Shin family of treason and had the entire clan executed. The men of the Shin family were subjected to the brutal punishment of being cut into 1,000 pieces. The women were skinned alive and turned into fans. The blood filled the sky, staining half of the capital city red. The pain and despair of that day still echo in my bones every day. Perhaps heaven took pity on the Shin family for their unjust suffering and granted me a second chance. When I opened my eyes, I found myself back on the day my elder sister begged to marry him. I resolved that this time, no matter what, I would stop her from marrying him. I thought it would take some effort. But to my surprise, my elder sister rose gracefully and said, "My sister is right. The third prince is not the right match for me." I stared at her in disbelief. In my previous life, my elder sister was willing to sacrifice her own life for that man. How could she change her mind so easily after a few words from me? The next moment, I saw her eyes redden slightly as she lowered her head and murmured, "I lived my entire life in vain, only realizing at the moment of death who truly loved me. Perhaps heaven allowed me to be reborn so that I would not miss out on Lu Zhao again." Lu Zhao, the crown prince of the current dynasty. My husband from my previous life. What is his connection to Shin Changning? As I looked at her with a mix of confusion and suspicion, Shin Changning took my hand and whispered, "Chang'an, do you believe in reincarnation?" Of course I do. But looking at my elder sister now, I wasn't sure if I should reveal the truth that I too had been reborn. So I bit my lip and listened quietly to what she had to say. Shin Changning, with tears in her eyes, pulled me to a secluded corner and began to tell her story. In my previous life, I was blind to people's true nature and insisted on marrying Lu Heng. Little did I know that after he ascended the throne, he banished me to the cold palace. He made his childhood sweetheart, his cousin, his empress. It turned out that everything I had done was merely to serve as a stepping stone for them. Anin. I am so resentful. Shin Changning told me many things about how Lu Heng's cousin, Du Yuerong, spoke one way and acted another, scheming against her. She even caused her to miscarry, losing the child in her womb. But I listened with little interest. Compared to the lives of the 372 members of the Shin family, the petty jealousy between her and Du Yuerong was trivial. So I lost patience and said directly, "What does this have to do with the crown prince? Why do you suddenly want to marry him again?" In my previous life, after Shin Changning married the third prince, I married the crown prince Lu Zhao. However, there was no real affection between us, we merely maintained a facade of mutual respect. Since the Shin family had staked everything on the third prince, Lu Heng, Lu Zhao quickly lost his power. After Lu Heng ascended the throne, Lu Zhao was demoted to a commoner and confined to house arrest. Soon after, the entire Shin family was executed. During my lifetime, I never heard Lu Zhao mention Shin Changning. At the time of our deaths, Lu Zhao was confined, and Shin Changning was trapped in the cold palace. How did these two become connected? What happened after my death? Shin Changning's gaze flickered. She seemed reluctant to mention the fact that the Shin family had been wiped out because of her. She quickly brushed it aside with 2 sentences. Originally, I thought there was no hope left for me in this life. I never expected Lu Zhao to rebel. It turns out he had been lying low, biding his time. When he rose up, he wrote a manifesto denouncing Lu Heng's crimes. One of the charges was the unforgivable sin of stealing his wife. When she mentioned this, Shin Changning's eyes lit up. A few tears of emotion welled up in her beautiful eyes, like falling stars. Only then did I realize that Lu Zhao had always been in love with me. It was only because Lu Heng had stolen me away that he had to endure the pain of letting me go. After learning that I was suffering, he regretted his decision. That's why he rebelled and wanted to take me away. Shin Changning seemed a bit excited. Her face flushed with color. But as she spoke, her mood grew somber again. Unfortunately, in my previous life, I didn't get to wait for him. After Lu Heng saw that proclamation, he forced me to drink a cup of poison. Shin Changning twisted her handkerchief, bit her lips, and said firmly, "In my previous life, I lost the man I loved. In this life, I will not let him down. I will be with Lu Zhao and help him ascend the throne. Let Lu Heng and Duero regret it deeply." As her emotions ran deep, Shin Changning shed 2 tears like pear blossoms. I only stared at her coldly. In my heart, I silently cursed her as a fool. In my previous life, if Lu Zhao truly loved Shin Changning, how could he have shown no signs of his feelings before she was married off? In the Great Zhou dynasty, the customs were open, and it was common for unmarried young men and women to secretly pledge their love to each other. Exchanging poems and making plans to travel together were also quite ordinary among young people. Yet Lu Zhao never did any of these things. Even after Shin Changning was married, he showed no signs of being hurt by it. Later, the entire Shin family was executed. If Lu Zhao truly loved Shin Changning, how could he have chosen to bide his time and stand by idly while her entire family was slaughtered? When he finally made his preparations for rebellion, he pretended it was for Shin Changning. Did he not know that Shin Changning was in Lu Heng's hands at the time? Once Lu Zhao's proclamation was issued, there was no way Lu Heng would spare her. No. He knew. He did it on purpose. The Shin family was a clan of loyal martyrs. And at that time, only Shin Changning remained. Lu Zhao deliberately provoked Lu Heng to kill the last member of the Shin family. His goal was to stir up public outrage. This would make his rebellion appear more justified. Such a blatant tactic. And my older sister actually believed it. I couldn't help but recall some stories I had read in old novels. In those stories, the protagonist, who was originally foolish and ignorant, suffered persecution. After being reborn, they were transformed beyond recognition, becoming incredibly wise. Those who had once looked down on them now looked at them with newfound respect. At the time, I found it strange. Did fools become wise after dying once? Is death some kind of magical elixir? Now I see that no matter how many times a fool dies, they remain just as foolish. I looked at my elder sister and said softly, "The third prince says he is fond of you, at least he sends you new toys every day. When you fell into the water, he risked his life to save you. The crown prince has barely seen your face a few times. He just wrote a few love notes in the proclamation. And you actually believed he loved you so much he couldn't live without you? If every man in the world wrote a few articles and included some love notes, would she really marry each one of them? Shin Changning widened her eyes and glared at me with a pout. He was willing to rebel for me. If it weren't for deep-rooted love, how could he go to such lengths? I was so angry I laughed. Lu Zhao is rebelling for her? It's clearly for the supreme imperial power. My older sister. How could she be so naive and foolish? I sighed deeply, trying to use the last remnants of our sisterly bond to persuade her. However, Shin Changning looked at me deeply. Chang'an, do you also have feelings for Lu Zhao? In our previous life, you were husband and wife. But as far as I know, you weren't very affectionate. Lu Zhao has always had only me in his heart. I know you might feel resentful, but since heaven has given me the chance to be reborn, it's to make up for the missed opportunity between him and me. In this life, no matter what, I won't let go. I stared at her intently. My heart was filled with endless coldness. In the previous life, before I died, I wasn't without resentment toward her. If it weren't for her being love-struck and disregarding her family's opposition to be with the third prince, the Shin family wouldn't have met such a fate. But I still tried my best to tell myself. It wasn't my elder sister's fault, she didn't foresee such an outcome. As the icy blade sliced through my skin, I was still worried. Was my elder sister in the deep palace able to escape her fate? Having been reborn, I swore to protect everyone in the Shin family. But it turned out that, in her heart, the lives of hundreds of people in the Shin family were not as important as her petty jealousy with Du Yuerong. The purpose of my rebirth was not to save my family. It was to make up for the missed opportunity with another man. I had thought Shin Changning was merely foolish. But now it's clear that two people who share the same bed can't be any different. She and Lu Heng are clearly cut from the same cloth. Selfish. Cold-hearted. Treating everyone who was kind to her as tools, and resorting to any means to achieve her goals. I looked at her, a faint smile curving my lips. I spoke slowly, one word at a time. Then I wish you all the best, sister. But I will never let you have what you want. After sending Shin Changning away, I immediately found my father. In the previous life, my father was the first to be executed. He had fought on the battlefield for years, with a proud spirit. Lu Heng, to humiliate him, cut off his flesh and fed it to dogs. After his death, his bones were ground into dust and scattered to the winds, ensuring he would never find peace in the afterlife. Looking at my father, who was still vibrant and alive before me, I couldn't help but tear up and threw myself into his arms. Father! What's wrong? My father looked at me in surprise. Did you just argue with your sister? I shook my head. It took me a while to compose myself. Then, I slowly revealed the truth about my rebirth and my sisters. For me, the sole purpose of rebirth was to save my family. But this was not something I could achieve alone. The Shin family's power had reached its peak, and they were accused of overshadowing the ruler. This was something no monarch could tolerate. Even if Lu Heng didn't ascend the throne, anyone else would eventually target the Shin family. Therefore, my enemy isn't Lu Heng. It's the supreme imperial power. Trying to shake it with just my own strength is simply too difficult. I need the entire Shin family to unite as one to secure our survival. At first, my father did not believe in the concept of reincarnation. He thought I was just talking nonsense after reading too many novels. But when I accurately described the events that would unfold in the coming days, and revealed the tragic fate of the Shin mansion in my previous life, after my persistent persuasion, he finally made up his mind. On an ordinary, sunny spring day, Shin Changning invited the crown prince out for a boat ride. I stood before the entire Shin clan, all the most powerful and respected members of the family. I revealed the tragic fate of the entire clan in my previous life, along with my plans and ambitions for this life. I needed their unwavering support. I intended to use this insignificant force to shake the very foundations of the corrupt dynasty and imperial power. On that day, Shin Changning received a poem from the crown prince. He was pondering what pattern to embroider on a handkerchief as a return gift. While I had become the covert ruler of the Shin clan, taking the first step toward destiny, Shin Changning's relationship with the crown prince grew increasingly close. She shyly confided in me that the crown prince planned to propose to the emperor shortly. The next day, my grandmother passed away. My father used the pretext of mourning to directly request permission from the emperor to return home. The emperor initially feigned reluctance, uttering some hollow words of retention. But when my father declared his willingness to voluntarily surrender his military authority, desiring only to retire in luxury and live out his days in leisure, the emperor was so delighted he could barely hide his smile and immediately agreed. He had long coveted the Shin family's military power. Now that my father had voluntarily stepped down, how could the emperor refuse? Needless to say, this was all part of my plan. It wouldn't be long before the emperor fell ill and passed away. The prince's struggle for the throne would then be laid bare. In the previous life, the Shin family was forced into the struggle and suffered severe losses. The wealth, power, and connections accumulated by the Shin clan over generations were almost entirely lost. Had it not been for that, Lu Hun would not have dared to betray his allies so soon after ascending the throne. This time, I have chosen to stay away from the center of the storm and watch the tigers fight from the sidelines. Once they are all weakened and on the brink of collapse, I will step in to reap the benefits. How delightful. As for military power, I will hand it over. The army is filled with my father's former subordinates. The emperor will find it difficult to purge and replace them. Moreover, he soon fell ill and is now preoccupied with his own affairs. These old subordinates are brothers who fought alongside my father through thick and thin, lying drunk on the battlefield. Even without the tiger token, they would stand up for him without hesitation when he needs them. To ensure my father could leave the capital with a clear conscience, I specially arranged for someone to obtain a fake death potion. With the Shin family's century-long accumulation, finding such a drug was not difficult. Originally, I planned to have my grandmother take the fake death potion later, but I never expected Shin Changning and the crown prince's feelings to grow so quickly. If the crown prince truly asks the emperor for her hand in marriage, the Shin family would be forced to align ourselves with the crown prince and get caught up in the struggle for the throne. Therefore, I had no choice but to advance the plan. On the day my grandmother passed away, Shin Changning cried as if her heart was being torn apart. Fearing she might reveal the truth, I never told her that my grandmother had only feigned death. Seeing her weep so bitterly, I finally remembered. My grandmother had always favored my older sister the most. I felt a pang of sympathy and tried to comfort her. But to my surprise, Shin Changning threw herself into my arms and cried, "Now that grandmother is gone, I must observe the 3-year mourning period. Lu Zhao will have to wait another 3 years for me. Why couldn't grandmother wait a little longer? We could have waited until after I married Lu Zhao. She always said she wanted to see me get married. Didn't she?" My gaze grew colder by the second. I thought she was, after all, the daughter of the Shin family and would have some regard for her relatives. But it turned out she was despising us because we were standing in the way of her pursuit of love. Fine. That's just perfect. Since she's so eager to be with her lover, why shouldn't I help her? I held Shin Changning in my arms without expression and spoke in the most seductive voice I could muster. Lu Zhao has waited for you his entire life. Can you bear to make him wait any longer? Tonight, everyone will be at the ancestral hall to keep vigil for our grandmother, and the backyard will be unguarded. Sister, think this through carefully. I'll leave it at that. That night, Shin Changning did not appear at the ancestral hall. She secretly escaped from the Shin family and went to the prince's mansion. never to return. My father announced to the outside world that she had died of illness due to excessive grief over our grandmother's passing. From then on, the Shin family had no longer a legitimate eldest daughter named Shin Changning. Several months later, a concubine appeared by the prince's side. It was said that she bore a striking resemblance to the former first beauty of the capital, Shin Changning, the eldest daughter of the Shin family. However, whenever anyone speculated that she was Shin Changning herself, they were met with mockery and ridicule. As the saying goes, if you marry her, she becomes your wife; if you elope with her, she becomes your concubine. How could a noblewoman from a distinguished family stoop so low as to elope and become someone's concubine? Moreover, the Shin family was still in mourning. Her own grandmother had just passed away. Yet she was already rushing to become a concubine. How shameless must she be? Therefore, they were certain that this woman could not be Shin Changning. She merely bore a passing resemblance. She was likely purchased from some brothel in the capital. The Shin family originally hailed from the water towns of Jiangnan. Every year, the women of the household would return to their hometown for a visit. But this time, they returned to lie low. A dragon lurks in the depths, waiting for the right moment to act. These days, I often find myself thinking, in her previous life, Shin Changning died because she trusted the wrong man. Now she has been given a second chance at life. As the saying goes, if one had known 3 years in advance, one could have enjoyed wealth and honor for 1,000 years. Instead of using this opportunity to take control of her own destiny, she chose to place her fate once again in the hands of another man. The storybooks I read before were mostly like this. A woman's greatest blessing is to meet a man who loves her. A woman's greatest misfortune is for this man to fall in love with someone else. A woman's way of revenge is either to find another more outstanding man to vindicate herself, or to simply die and put an end to it all. And the husband who had tormented her so much before, because of her death, finally came to his senses. He must have felt 1,000 kinds of pain and 100 kinds of regret. It seems that a woman's life is inevitably tied to a man. To make a man fall deeply in love with her is the greatest reward. But I have searched through countless books and have never found a man whose life is honored by meeting a woman and risking his life for her. In those women's manuals and moral teachings, praise women who are deeply in love with men as chaste and virtuous. Yet in the sacred texts men read, such behavior is vehemently condemned. Men who are obsessed with romantic love are deemed to be petty, cowardly, and worthless. How utterly shameless and ridiculous. If women truly believe the lies men have concocted, they would inevitably become their slaves, to be toyed with and trampled upon. I put away the musical instruments and paintings of the women's quarters, and abandoned needlework and cooking. I began to frequent the study, picking up the 4 books and 5 classics. Under the guidance of my father and brothers, I gradually began to study military strategy and archery. At first, some people pointed fingers at me. They believed that a woman studying such things was utterly ridiculous. What noble woman would ever study such trivialities? But I always had my own scale, my own standard of judgment. Whether something is good or bad, you cannot judge by what others say, but by what they do. They mocked women for studying the 4 books and 5 classics, military strategy, and archery, yet they took pride in their own achievements in these very fields. They claimed that needlework and cooking were the hallmarks of a virtuous wife and mother. But if a man showed interest in these skills, he would be mocked by everyone. Good things do not become bad simply because a woman does them. And bad things do not become good simply because a woman does them. They were merely using such methods to mold women into the image they desired. Their hearts are deserving of condemnation. If one truly believes their nonsense, one will be doomed to a life of servitude for all eternity. The Shin family lay low in Jiangnan for 3 years. During those 3 years, the Shin family did only 2 things. The first was to disperse their entire fortune. My maternal family had been imperial merchants for generations, wealthy enough to rival a nation. My maternal grandfather passed away early, leaving only my mother as his sole daughter. She inherited the entire fortune. In the previous life, the downfall of the Shin family was partly due to this immense wealth. In this life, rather than waiting for the emperor to confiscate their assets, the Shin family chose to donate everything voluntarily. The current emperor is incompetent and tyrannical, leaving the people in dire straits. Upon arriving in Jiangnan, the Shin family voluntarily donated funds to repair irrigation systems, dig canals, and establish schools. They also set up numerous charitable institutions across the region, specifically to care for abandoned infants, elderly widows and widowers, and destitute women without homes. During times of drought or flooding, they opened their granaries to provide relief. In just a few short years, the entire Jiangnan region knew the name of the Shin family. The common people erected shrines in honor of the Shin family, regarding the Shin clan as their saviors. Refugees from all over the country flocked to Jiangnan. For a time, many people knew only the Shin family and not the emperor. The Shin family's reputation and influence reached an unparalleled height. However, I was not concerned that this would attract the emperor's suspicion, because all these acts of kindness were initiated by the women of the Shin family. On the surface, they would praise us for our compassionate hearts and kind-heartedness. Behind our backs, however, they would sneer and call it the kindness of women. Some even began to think, the Shin family has handed over their military power and surrendered their wealth. This must be a sign of their impending decline. The Shin family's daughters, once sought after by many families, now found themselves unmarried and neglected. If these actions had been initiated by my father or brothers, people would undoubtedly assume the Shin family, with both power and wealth, is now attempting to win the hearts of the people. They must be plotting rebellion. The same actions, yet the attitudes differ so greatly simply because the people behind them are different. How truly laughable. However, I believe that the hearts of the people are the clearest. They will judge for themselves who truly cares for them. The second thing the Shin family did in Jiangnan was to raise an army. Of course, they couldn't do it openly. Several of my elder brothers pretended to be idle playboys, spending their days hunting and carousing. When martial artists and heroes from the common folk came to join them, they spared no expense. In the eyes of the aristocratic youths, my brothers mingling with a bunch of thieves and rogues was a disgrace. But to those martial artists, my brothers were rare men of honor, mentors who recognized their talent. Heroes of the martial arts world valued righteousness above life and death, and a promise was worth 1,000 pieces of gold. In my eyes, the value of these people far exceeded that of well-trained soldiers. Additionally, since the women of the Shin family often went out to perform acts of kindness, the Shin family used concerns for the safety of the ladies of the house as an excuse to recruit many household soldiers. These soldiers were all personally trained by my father. Each of them is an elite warrior capable of fighting 10 men. Over the course of 3 years, the Shin family has amassed tens of thousands of household guards, secret agents, and retainers. The officials in Jiangnan and the ministers in the imperial court have all been bribed by us. Not a single person has reported this matter to the emperor. A hidden dragon should not be used. The Shin family has endured the time when it must bide its time and remain hidden. When the dragon appears in the field, it is advantageous to see the great man. Now is the time to reveal our talents and demonstrate our virtues and aspirations. The Shin family has been operating in Jiangnan for 3 years. The entire region has almost become the Shin mansion's backyard. After the 3-year mourning period, it was finally time to return to the capital. As soon as I arrived back in the capital, I received a letter from Shin Changning. She invited me to visit the prince's mansion. It's strange. In the past 3 years, she never once thought of her relatives in Jiangnan. Not even a single letter was sent. Now she's suddenly putting on an act of deep sisterly affection. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Most likely, someone is pulling the strings behind the scenes. Though I know this is no ordinary gathering, I still go with an open mind. After 3 years apart, I'm curious as well. How is the older sister who once believed she had married for love faring now? Shin Changning has grown much thinner. She was always slender, but now her waist is barely an inch wide. Once upon a time, she was renowned for her ethereal beauty, graceful and otherworldly. But now, she is adorned with jewels and heavy makeup. She exudes a vulgar, stiff, and petty air. Yet she herself is oblivious to the change, smugly believing herself to be the epitome of earthly wealth and beauty. She resembles those from humble backgrounds who suddenly strike it rich. With their arrogant demeanor, Shin Changning has a good facial structure. Though her taste has grown vulgar, she remains of first-rate beauty. However, it is the beauty of a concubine. It was entirely different from the elegant and dignified beauty of women from distinguished families. In just a few short years, a person could change so much. How have you been these past few years, sister? I asked indifferently. Though I am in Jiangnan, I have heard rumors about the capital. The crown prince married the daughter of the chancellor as his primary wife 2 years ago. Judging by Shin Changning's appearance, it's clear that the primary wife isn't easy to get along with. Sure enough, as soon as I asked, Shin Changning began to complain endlessly. She spoke only of trivial matters within the inner quarters. The crown prince's wife had her servants withhold her allowance. The crown prince's wife spoke ill of her in front of the crown prince. The crown prince's wife scolded her for not having children after all these years in the household. And the servants mocked her behind her back, calling her a hen that couldn't lay eggs. All trivial matters, repeated until I felt drowsy. Yet Shin Changning grew increasingly aggrieved, her eyes soon brimming with tears. So I could only force myself to ask impatiently, "What about the crown prince? Didn't you say he loved you deeply? Didn't he step in to defend you?" The Shin family has a strict moral code. My father had only one wife, and no concubines. Therefore, I know little about the affairs of the inner courtyard. However, during banquets in the past, I often heard the ladies and misses complain about their own family matters. It was always the same. The main wife accused the concubines of being seductive. The concubines, in turn, complained that the main wife was too harsh. Both sides had their own perspectives and were as hostile as water and fire. At that time, I thought to myself, they hate each other so much because of the suffering they endure. But the one who truly put them in such a miserable situation is clearly their selfish, unprincipled, lustful, and unfaithful husband. However, regardless of which side they were on, they tacitly omitted their husbands from their verbal battles. It was the men who had done wrong. Yet the women blamed and complained to one another, venting their frustration on another woman who was also a victim. Meanwhile, the man who had done wrong not only remained completely uninvolved. He would even shake his head and say, "Only women and small-minded people are difficult to deal with," mocking them all in the process. It's truly disgusting. Sure enough, when I mentioned the crown prince, Shin Changning's eyes widened in displeasure. The affairs of the inner quarters are women's business. How could I bring them up to embarrass the crown prince? Shin Changning seemed to be scolding me for being ignorant. After a pause, she added, "The crown prince is very kind to me. It's just that men are not as thoughtful as women. There are many things he doesn't notice, and I don't want to bother him with them. It's not a big deal anyway, just endure it and it will pass." Humph. I snorted derisively. If he truly cared, how could he not notice? It's just that he doesn't bother to care. As if to emphasize how much the crown prince valued her, Shin Changning added, "He said that marrying the crown princess was merely a matter of circumstance. The only one he truly loves is me. All these years, I've been his only concubine. The other princes all have several. When she mentioned being the crown prince's only concubine, Shin Changning seemed rather proud. The glow on her face was impossible to hide. I felt utterly disgusted. My tone grew cold. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. I didn't even bother with small talk and was about to storm out. But Shin Changning grabbed my hand. Wait! Sister has something to discuss with you. She bit her lip, seeming hesitant to speak. I have been in the mansion for many years without a child. Although the crown prince does not mind, others cannot help but gossip. You are young and in good health. If you enter the mansion, you will surely give birth to a son or daughter for the crown prince. Then, the two of us can work together and overthrow the crown princess. She hesitated for a while before finally revealing her intentions. My dear sister, you actually want me to accompany you to become someone else's concubine. You even want me to bear several children to serve as your bargaining chips in the palace intrigues. A wave of disgust swept over me. I no longer spared her any courtesy and coldly laughed, saying, "Do you think everyone is as self-degrading as you? Eagerly rushing to become someone else's concubine? As the legitimate daughter of the Shin family, I am meant to be a wife, not a concubine, and I have not the slightest interest in your crown prince. Even if he were to offer me the title of crown princess, it would not catch my eye." When I uttered the words self-degrading, Shin Changning's face turned deathly pale. She stared at me in disbelief, her eyes brimming with tears. After a moment, she opened her mouth to say something, but a voice suddenly interrupted her. "Ninger, go down first." The crown prince Lu Zhao finally appeared. Shin Changning shot me a resentful glance before turning and leaving. When I received Shin Changning's invitation, I knew there must be Lu Zhao's influence behind it. In fact, I was fully aware of his true intentions. Over the past few years, I had been making a name for myself in Jiangnan. I attended schools, and my poetry and prose were as good as any man's. I did many good deeds, and everyone praised the eldest daughter of the Shin family for having the heart of a bodhisattva. More importantly, using my memories from my previous life, I successfully predicted several disasters and set up arrays to pray for rain. With my deliberate encouragement, the common people began to worship me as a divine maiden. They believed I was sent by heaven to perform divine arts. Rumors even spread that whoever obtained Shin Changning would rule the world. Nonsense! If I truly had the power to sway the fate of the world, why would I willingly be passed around among men, to be treated like an object to be taken and discarded? Wouldn't it be better to rule the world myself? The moment I entered the capital, I knew I would be an excellent bait. The struggle for the throne had lasted 3 years, leaving only the crown prince and the third prince's factions. Now, the two sides were deadlocked and both needed fresh blood. And I, along with the Shin family I represented, had become the crucial bargaining chip. I just didn't expect the one who couldn't keep his cool first would be the crown prince. It seems he's truly been pushed to the brink by the third prince. Lu Zhao gazed at me with eyes brimming with affection. "Chang'an, the only one I've ever truly loved is you. Your sister is nothing but a stand-in. If you're willing to marry me, the position of crown princess will be yours. Once I ascend the throne, you will be the sole empress." Lu Zhao's lies were utterly transparent. I suspect that Shin Changning is too stupid, so he thinks that as her sister, I must be just as foolish. He doesn't even bother to lie properly. I didn't want to say anything more, so I laughed coldly. Those who follow different paths cannot walk together. Your Highness, take your heartfelt words and tell them to your concubines. This servant girl is not worthy. Lu Zhao stared at me for a moment. Then he suddenly gave a meaningful smile. Not bad. Compared to your sister, you at least have some brains. But, Shin Chang'an, do you really think that after entering the prince's mansion today, you'll be able to leave? No sooner had he finished speaking than a group of guards surrounded me. encircling me completely. Ignoring my screams and curses, they forcibly dragged me away. A few days later was the princess consort's birthday. The crown prince planned to pretend to be drunk that night and have relations with me. He would then have guests brought in to witness our affair. This would force me to marry him. When Shin Changning spoke with a smug expression, revealing that this plan was her gift to the crown prince, I couldn't help but sigh deeply. Shin Changning, I spoke softly. Am I your own flesh and blood? Nothing more than a tool to please men? My heart was filled with pity. My dear sister, this is your last chance. Shin Changning smiled and met my gaze. Chang'an, I know you're strong-willed. But if you ever experience the taste of love, you'll understand. In the end, a woman's life is nothing more than seeking priceless treasures and finding a man who truly loves her. One day, you'll thank me. I silently averted my gaze. Just now, Shin Changning missed her last chance. To me, she is no longer my elder sister. She is the one who killed the Shin family. She is the one who tried to push me into the fire. I will no longer show her mercy. There are only 3 days left until the crown prince's birthday. That is enough time. It is time to act and decide the fate of the kingdom.